Okay, it's finally time that I talk about the Autel Smart Controller. I've had it for a little over a week now and I'm ready to give you my first impressions. Now just a reminder, this is not a full review and only my first impressions. Let's get started. What's good everybody, Ken here, you're watching Original Dobo. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Autel Smart Controller. This has been a highly anticipated device that a lot of people have been looking forward to. So with that said, let's go ahead and just jump right into the specs of this device. This is a 7.9 inch display. Rather large, and if I had to compare it to anything, I would say it's about the size of an iPad mini's display. It has 2000 nits of brightness, and the screen is actually pretty sharp. Now, Autel claims that this display is actually QHD. Now, when I open up the CPU-Z to take a look at the display settings, it comes in at 2048 by 1440. Now, on all of the websites, they actually claim that display to be a little bit higher at 2048 by 1536. It's off by just a little bit. But if we look at the screen resolution in DP, it's actually 1024 by 720 for pixel density of 320 DPI, which is actually pretty good. So it's actually a rather sharp display despite that minor discrepancy. Now it does pack an octa-core Samsung Exynos processor powered by an ARM chip, which is actually a lot better than the MediaTek processors that we've seen on the DJI Smart Controller and other tablets that boast similar brightnesses. 4 gigs of RAM, which I was hoping for 6 or 8, but again, because this is only performing one task, running the Autel Explorer app, you really don't need much more than that. Now, it does have 128 gigs of onboard storage, but unfortunately there is no expandable storage. Up at the top of the device, you do have a port where I was hoping to see an SD card slot, but there wasn't one there. You do have HDMI out, USB-C, and then also a USB-A port where you can connect external drives such as SSDs or USB thumb drives to transfer files directly over to this. There's also no slot for a SIM card if you were hoping for LTE connectivity. Maybe that will come in a later version, and it's also behooving of me to remind you that this is the version 1 of the Smart Controller, meaning that this has the V1 chipset, so it's only going to be compatible with the V1 Autel Evos. With that said, this only works with the Evo 2 series, even though when you launch the application, it will ask you which device you're connecting to, an Evo or an Evo 2. Now, I don't have an Evo 1 anymore to test whether or not it would actually connect to it, but I would guess based upon the supported devices, it's not going to work with the Evo 1 line. So don't buy it if you have an Evo 1. Okay, the device runs Android 7.0. It seems to be a common trend amongst devices like this to run older operating systems. One of the reasons why they tend to do this is because of Google Play services is so heavily integrated into the newer versions of Android, which would mean they would need to certify this with Google to run the application. Now, the Android Explorer app that's installed on this device will not be the same version that you would download and install to your Android devices subsequently. I tried because the version wasn't correct on here, so I tried installing it and it kept failing. I also noticed the version and build types were different, so that would explain the variances in the hardware, that they're building an application specifically for the Smart Controller so it can optimize its performance. Okay, battery life on this thing is actually really good. In my testing over the past week, I was able to get about 3.5 hours of continuous usage out of this with maximum brightness set to 2000 nits. It's rated for 3.5 to 4 hours. I was more along the lines of 3.5 hours. You'll also be happy to know that with the included 65 watt wall charger, this thing can charge in about an hour and 30 minutes, which is really impressive in comparison to the Smart Controller that DJI offers. Also, the range has been extended and improved on this, although I will be doing a dedicated range test on this device to see exactly what it can actually do, and I'll likely test that over the water, because that to me is the safest spot to do these types of range tests. Okay, let's talk about the physical ergonomics of this device because, like I said, it's a rather large device. It's so large, this is the first controller that I really only feel comfortable flying with a lanyard. Luckily enough, Autel does include a lanyard in the box, and it's actually a 3-point lanyard. You'll notice on the back you have 2 clips and then a clip down on the bottom to make a 3-point harness. Works actually really well, and it's pretty comfortable, surprisingly. You can also let it go and it keeps the proper orientation, so you don't really have to hold the sides if you are a pincher. Speaking of pinching, the thumbsticks are removable on this device. However, there is one huge design flaw that I think Autel missed out on, is the fact that there is nowhere to stick these thumbsticks anywhere on this device. I thought at one point I was possibly missing this, but there's nowhere to put these. So once you take them off, you don't have anywhere to stow them. They do include a second set of thumbsticks in the box, and I can only assume because they realized they didn't make anywhere to actually store these. So I think that's a bit of a design fail, but luckily enough, I'm going to be designing a way to mount something directly to this device that will allow you to store your sticks safely. All right, on the back side of this, you'll also notice there's these grips. These grips are removable on this device. Without these grips installed, it is a little bit funny to fly. It doesn't feel quite as ergonomical in the hand. Is that even a word, ergonomical? Anyways, it just doesn't feel as comfortable to hold without these grips installed. You can remove these grips, and more so if you need to do any sort of repairs or replace things, you would want to go ahead and remove it. There is a speaker on the backside. The speaker is very, very loud and clear. There are fans installed on here, so there is active cooling. When you're in direct sunlight, these fans spin up quite frequently. I'm surprised at this point it hasn't started spinning up. I do have the brightness turned down on this, so it mitigates some of that fan noise, but the fans do spin up rather quickly. There are custom buttons on this device, a C1, C2, home button, pause button, and then you have a record photograph button and 2 different dials on the left and right side that are customizable. Now, a lot of you have asked, how is the gimbals? Well, the gimbals feel 100 times better than what they are on the Evo controller from factory. And a lot of that is in part to the stick placement and the overall stick design. It just feels a little bit better. They're a little bit wider. For a pincher, they feel phenomenal. For a thumber, they would work absolutely excellent. I noticed that my fingers didn't slide off of them as much as they did before. Although because the controller is so wide, it does take a little bit of time to get used to that scroll wheel. So if you're somebody looking to get those cinematic shots, they may be a little bit more difficult with this RC than the standard controller just because of the size. You will want to go ahead and use that lanyard if you are flying with it. All right, let's talk about the overall sensitivity of the controller as well. I feel like the sensitivity of this is really excellent. And with the new firmware, you can tune the gain and expo of the controller, and it just feels like the drone responds a lot better, at least from what I've seen. Now, I haven't tested that same software on the standard RC. I'll be sure to do that pretty soon. But from what I found with this, I've tuned my gain and expo, and I feel like it's flying really good the way it is. And I'll likely just leave it alone because I don't think I can get better out of this. I've never been able to orbit so easily now that I've tuned that. So if you're interested in trying my settings, I'll go ahead and include them in the description so you can set yours to the same way that mine is set. I spent a lot of time actually yesterday just sort of going around and just sort of fine tuning the little details in the latest software. And I think I've got everything dialed in at this point. All right, like I said, the range is more. It's 8 miles, 8.1 miles or 13 kilometers, however you want to interpret that. The fact that we do have new antennas that are removable, if you want to take these antennas clear off, you can go ahead and do that. As far as the orientation goes, there was really no instructions on the proper orientation of these. I just go ahead and sort of stick mine up like this, or you can hold them straight out. It doesn't really matter. I don't think it's going to affect the range all that much. So all in all, pretty happy with the design of it, and I like the fact that you can add additional antennas or change these antennas out if you feel like these are not adequate enough. Overall signal and smoothness coming back down to the quad is really good. I didn't notice any stutter, I didn't notice any hiccups. I did have some minor issues when I first started booting this up. I had the app crashing and freezing on me. and I had to clear the cache on it, and then I had to actually update to the latest version. So again, this is beta software that is on here currently right now. So as they start to do more improvements, that would change. So the question is going to be, is this right for somebody who's a hobbyist? And honestly, I can say no, that this is not a hobbyist device. This is not the same capacity as the DJI Smart Controller. This to me screams enterprise. This to me screams somebody who is doing this type of work commercially. If you're somebody who is going to do things such as real estate photography, videography, site scans, thermal scans, or have to plot or do 3D mapping, then this would definitely be for you. This is somebody who needs something that's going to be rugged, somewhat water resistant, and last a good chunk of the day, and that they're constantly using their drone almost every day to get the value back out of this. It's over $1,200 for this device. So that's almost the cost of the drone itself. And if you find an Evo on a sale and you get the controller, you're at almost $2,500 essentially for both of these devices. It just doesn't make sense. And also the fact that this is the version 1 and won't be future-proofed at all just means I can't really recommend you purchasing the V1 version of this controller. Unfortunately, because it's a V1, it's just not worth purchasing. Now, if you do have the opportunity to buy the V2 and the V2 Smart Controller, then I would say there's a better chance. But you know what? A lot of it's honestly going to hinge on the questions that I asked Randall on my live stream and how he responded, I guess, to those questions about future-proofing and whether or not you buy this. The reality is I can tell you not to buy this, and you all will still go out and buy it because it's the latest and greatest, and you have FOMO, fear of missing out on something that you just don't really need. Nobody needs something like this. Nobody needs something like this unless you are an enterprise use case scenario, such as construction or search and rescue or law enforcement. I can see the need for something like this having a dedicated device. But beyond that, as far as a hobbyist goes, I really can't recommend it. But like I said, you're going to buy it anyways. You got it in your cart right now. I see it in your cart. So that's my first impressions at this point as of right now. As I begin to use this more, I will probably change my opinion on it. I usually do. But that's just how first impressions are. This is my honest first thoughts on this. I think it's a great device. It's cumbersome, it's clunky, it's huge, but I do like the fact that it charges so fast. I do like the fact that it has a really, really bright screen, and it feels really snappy thanks to part of that 8-core processor. It just scoots right along. And because it's an Exynos processor, we know we're getting something that is secure, safe, and just works really well. It's also pretty efficient. That's probably why they're able to achieve what they achieve as far as battery life on something this size. Now, a couple of minor things that I found in the marketing that I found funny. They call this a retina display. I'm pretty sure they need to change the naming of that because that's pretty sure it's trademarked by Apple. Beyond that, I probably would also put a screen cover on this, an iPad screen cover, an iPad mini screen cover. You might just have to trim it down just a little bit, but that will actually work really well on this device. So I would definitely put a screen cover because otherwise you're going to scratch this glass really easily. And then, like I said, just the stick thing is just a pain in the ass. I can't believe they did that. I don't understand that, but there you go. All right, if you want to get one of these for yourself, I'll have a link down below for DroneWorks. Like I said, I'm telling you not to buy this, but if you're going to buy it and you have it in your cart already, you might as well buy it from DroneWorks. You can support me, support you, and all that good shit. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I will be doing a dedicated range test. I know you guys are going to ask. There will be one coming very soon. That's all for today. Stay original.
Users want, or do they just want reliable support, reliable supply chain companies that come forward and tell you, hey, it's going to be 6 weeks before you're going to get your smart controller, and be straight up about it? Like, we could have said nothing about the chip change and just been like, what are you talking about? That's what other companies do.